So we will be starting with the chapter Civilizing the Native, Educating the Nation. Now before starting with the chapter, let us know what all we will be looking in this chapter. So in this chapter, we will be looking about the British perspective on education in India and how it evolved along with other Indian leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore, how they reacted to this evolution. Okay, and also I will tell you that the British people they wanted to civilize the natives because they believed that Indian society was backward, uncivilized, full of errors, and it needed to be modernized. How it will be modernized? By introducing European ideas, education, customs, and values. Okay, so let's see how it all happened. Okay, now let's start with the chapter. So in the earlier chapters, you have seen how British rule affected Rajas and Nawabs, peasants and tribals. In this chapter, we will try and understand what implication it had for the lives of students. For the British in India wanted not only territorial conquest and control over revenues, they also felt that they had a cultural mission. They had to civilize the natives, change their customs and values. Okay. Now, what changes are to be introduced? How were Indians to be educated, civilized, and made into what the British believed were good subjects? Now, who are subjects? Who follow them? Who will follow them, right? Now, the British could find no simple answers to these questions. They continued to be debated for many decades. Now, how the British saw education. Now, let us look at what the British thought and did, and how some of the ideas of education that we now take for granted evolved in the last 200 years. In the process of this inquiry, we will also see how Indians reacted to British ideas and how they developed their own views about how Indians were to be educated. Now, the tradition of Orientalism. Okay. Now, who were Orientalists? So, Orientalists were people who believed that the British should promote Indian languages and ancient texts to better understand and rule the country. Okay, so let us study. In 1783, a person named William Jones arrived in Calcutta. He had an appointment as a junior judge at the Supreme Court that the company had set up. In addition to being an expert in law, Jones was a linguist. Now, who is a linguist? A person who knows many languages. Okay, see here. Someone who knows and studies several languages. Okay, so he had a knowledge of many languages. Okay, so he had studied Greek and Latin at Oxford, knew French and English, had picked up Arabic from a friend, and had also learned Persian. At Calcutta, he began spending many hours a day with pundits who taught him the subtleties of Sanskrit language, grammar, and poetry. Soon he was studying ancient Indian texts on law, philosophy, religion, politics, morality, arithmetic, medicine, and other sciences. So Jones discovered that his interests were shared by many British officials living in Calcutta at that time. Englishmen like Henry Thomas Colebrook and Nathaniel Halhed were also busy discovering the ancient Indian heritage, mastering Indian languages, and translating Sanskrit and Persian works into English. So these two people were also almost of the same taste. Okay. So together with them, Jones set up the Asiatic Society of Bengal and started a journal called Asiatic Researchers. Okay. Now Jones and Colebrook came to represent a particular attitude towards India. They shared a deep respect for ancient cultures both of India and the West. Okay. So Indian civilization they felt had attained its glory in the ancient past, but had subsequently declined. In order to understand India, it was necessary to discover the sacred and legal texts that were produced in the ancient period. For only those texts could reveal the real ideas and laws of the Hindus and Muslims. And only a new study of these texts could form the basis of future development in India. So they thought that they should deeply, study these ancient texts, these sacred and legal texts, so as to develop India. So Jones and Colebrook went about discovering ancient texts, understanding their meaning, translating them, and making their findings known to others. This project, they believed, would not only help the British learn from Indian culture, but it would also help Indians rediscover their own heritage and understand the lost glories of the past. So in this process, the British would become the guardians of Indian culture as well as its masters. Okay. So in this way, the British will become the guardians. Guardians are the people who protect them. So okay. So guardians, they will become guardians of Indian culture, means they will protect the Indian culture. Okay. And also the masters as well, who will rule. See here in this figure 2. This is Henry Thomas Colebrook. Okay. So he was a scholar of Sanskrit and ancient sacred writings of Hinduism. Now influenced by such ideas, many company officials argued that the British ought to promote Indian rather than Western learning. They felt that institutions should be set up to encourage the study of ancient Indian texts and teach Sanskrit and Persian literature and poetry. The officials also thought that Hindus and Muslims ought to be taught what they are already familiar with and what they valued and treasured, not subjects that were alien to them, means new to them. Only then they believed could the British hope to win a place in the hearts of the natives, only then could the alien rulers expect to be respected by their subjects. Alien means who come from other land. Now, with this object in view, a madrasa was set up in Calcutta in 1781 to promote the study of Arabic, Persian, and Islamic law, and the Hindu college was established in Benares in 1791 to encourage the study of ancient Sanskrit texts that would be useful for the administration of the country. Now, what is a madrasa? So, madrasa is an Arabic word for a place of learning, any type of school or college. Okay. Now, see this figure 3. Monument to Warren Hastings by Richard Westmacott, 1830, now in Victoria Memorial in Calcutta. Now, this image represents how Orientalists thought of British power in India. You will notice that the majestic figure of Hastings, an enthusiastic supporter of the Orientalists, is placed between the standing figure of a Pandit on one side and a seated Munshi on the other side. So, this is Hastings, right? Hastings and other Orientalists needed Indian scholars to teach them the vernacular languages, tell them about local customs and laws, and help them translate and interpret ancient texts. Hastings took the initiative to set up the Calcutta Madrasa and believed that the ancient customs of the country and the Oriental learning ought to be the basis of British rule in India. Okay. Now see, who are Orientalists? So those with a scholarly knowledge of the language and culture of Asia. Then who is a Munshi? A person who can read, write and teach Persian. Then vernacular. What do you mean by term vernacular? So a term generally used to refer to a local language or dialect as distinct from what is seen as a standard language. So in colonial countries like India, the British used the term to mark the difference between the local languages of everyday use and English, the language of the imperial masters. Okay. Now, not all officials share these views. Many were very strong in their criticism of the Orientalists. Now, there were people who will criticize these Orientalists, right? Now, grave errors of the East. From the early 19th century, many British officials began to criticize the Orientalist vision of learning. Okay? They said that knowledge of the East was full of errors and unscientific thought. Eastern literature was non-serious and light-hearted. So they argued that it was wrong on the part of the British to spend so much effort in encouraging the study of Arabic and Sanskrit language and literature. Now James Mill was one of those who attacked the Orientalists. Okay, so he was against the Orientalists. The British effort, he declared, should not be to teach what the natives wanted or what they respected in order to please them and win a place in their heart. The aim of education ought to be to teach what was useful and practical. Okay. So he said that the aim of education should not be to teach that what the people wanted to learn. It should be that what will benefit them, what will make them into good individuals. Okay, what is practical, what they will apply in lives and how they will earn, right? So Indians should be familiar with the scientific and technical advances that the West had made. Okay, rather than with the poetry and sacred literature of the Orient. By the 1830s, the attack on the Orientalists became sharper. One of the most outspoken and influential of such critics of the time was Thomas Babington Macaulay. He saw India as an uncivilized country that needed to be civilized. Okay, so now he directly said that Indians are uncivilized and they needed to be civilized. Okay. What do you mean by uncivilized people? Means people who are not socially, culturally, or morally advanced, right? They are very backward, according to them. Okay. So they said no branch of Eastern knowledge, according to him, could be compared to what England had produced. Who could deny, declared Macaulay, that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. He said that just a single shelf of European library is worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia will constitute. Okay. So he urged that the British government in India stop wasting public money in promoting Oriental learning, for it was of no practical use. Now, with great energy and passion, Macaulay emphasized the need to teach the English language. He felt that knowledge of English would allow Indians to read some of the finest literature the world had produced. And according to me, it was very good also, because if such people would haven't encouraged English. English is a good language which is almost followed in every country in the world, right? So it was good that Indians were taught English, right? Now, it would make them aware of the developments in Western science and philosophy. Teaching of English could thus be a way of civilizing people, changing their tastes, values, and culture. And they will learn, they will earn more, right? So, following Macaulay's Minute, the English Education Act of 1835 was introduced. The decision was to make English the medium of instruction for higher education and to stop the promotion of Oriental institutions like the Calcutta Madrasa and Benares Sanskrit College. These institutions were seen as temple of darkness that were falling of themselves into decay. So this means that they were temples of darkness, means they are pulling people more backward. They are not advancing them. They are rather pulling them back more. Okay, into decay means into destruction. Now English textbooks now began to be produced for schools. Okay, now there were English medium schools and English textbooks were produced for school education as well. Now, before proceeding to this next topic, let us read the source one, the pink box on the left hand side. So, language of the wise. Emphasizing the need to teach English, Macaulay declared, all parties seem to be agreed on one point, that the dialects commonly spoken among the natives of India contain neither literary nor scientific information and are moreover so poor and rude that until they are enriched from some other quarter, it will not be easy to translate any valuable work into them. Okay. Now the next topic, education for commerce. In 1854, the Court of Directors of the East India Company in London sent an educational dispatch to the Governor General in India, issued by Charles Wood, the President of the Board of Control of the Company. It has come to be known as Wood's Dispatch. Okay. Now, what does this say? Outlining the educational policy that was to be followed in India, it emphasized once again the practical benefits of a system of European learning as opposed to Oriental knowledge. Okay. Now, what do you mean by education for commerce? Means to earn money. Okay. So, education was such that it should earn money for the people. It should benefit the people. Okay. Now, one of the practical uses the dispatch pointed to was economic. Okay. So economics means to trade to earn money, okay? Now European learning, it said, would enable Indians to recognize the advantages that flow from the expansion of trade and commerce and make them see the importance of developing the resources of the country. Introducing them to European ways of life would change their tastes and desires and create a demand for British goods. For Indians would begin to appreciate and buy things that were produced in Europe. Okay. Now, if this will happen, if Indians would start buying things which are produced in Europe, then in that way the British economy will improve. Okay. Now, Wood's dispatch also argued that European learning would improve the moral character of Indians. Okay, it would make them truthful and honest, and thus supply the company with civil servants who could be trusted and depended upon. Now, this was a very important point which they wanted. Okay, why they want to civilize these people, so that they could they could teach them the way they wanted, and then they could use them. They could use these resources for them, right? So they aim to create a class of Indians to assist in running the country, using English as a medium of instruction and to facilitate administration and trade. Okay, so they were preparing people for themselves, right? To which will benefit them. Okay. Now the literature of the East was not only full of grave errors, but it could also not instill in people a sense of duty and a commitment to work, nor could it develop the skills required for administration. Okay. Now, following the 1854 dispatch, several measures were introduced by the British. Education departments of the government were set up to extend control over all matters regarding education. Steps were taken to establish a system of university education. So the steps were also taken to establish a system of university education. Not it was not limited to school. Now they were encouraging universities as well. So in 1857, while the sepoys rose in revolt in Meerut and Delhi, universities were being established in Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay. Attempts were also made to bring about changes within the system of school education. Now let's see this source 2, an argument for European knowledge, the spring box on the right hand side. Wood's dispatch of 1854 marked the final triumph of those who opposed Oriental learning. It stated, "We must emphatically declare that the education which we desire to see extended in India is that which has for its object the diffusion of the improved arts, services, philosophy, and literature of Europe, in short, European knowledge." Now see this figure. So this is Bombay University in the 19th century. Okay. Now the demand for moral education. Why they were encouraging moral education? Now the argument for practical education was strongly criticized by the Christian missionaries in India in the 19th century. The missionaries felt that education should attempt to improve the moral character of the people, and morality could be improved only through Christian education. Until 1813, the East India Company was opposed to missionary activities in India. It feared that missionary activities would provoke reaction among the local population and make them suspicious of British presence in India. Unable to establish an institution within British controlled territories, the missionaries set up a mission at Serampore in an area under the control of the Danish East India Company. A printing press was set up in 1800 and a college established in 1818. Over the 19th century, missionary schools were set up all over India. After 1857, however, the British government in India was reluctant to directly support missionary education. There was a feeling that any strong attack on local customs, practices, beliefs, and religious ideas might enrage native opinion. Okay, they were not in favor of encouraging this British education. Okay, because they were feeling that this will they will face native enrage. Okay, they felt that natives will protest against it. Okay, now see this figure 6. William Carey was a Scottish missionary who helped establish the Serampore mission. Now again see this. This is Serampore College on the banks of River Hooghly near Calcutta. Again, this is a college or university which was established. Now, what happened to the local schools? Now, they were local schools before these missionary schools. Now, what happened to them? So, do you have any idea of how children were taught in pre-British times? Have you ever wondered whether they went to schools, and if they were schools, what happened to these under British rule? Now, the report of William Adam on this. In the 1830s, William Adam, a Scottish missionary, toured the districts of Bengal and Bihar. He had been asked by the company to report on the progress of education in vernacular schools. The report Adam produces interesting. Now let's study. Before studying, let's see this figure 8. This is a village Pathshala. So this is a painting by a Dutch painter, Francois Solven, who came to India in the late 18th century, and he tried to depict the everyday life of people in his paintings. Now let's see what that report says. So Adam found that there were over 1 lakh Pathshalas in Bengal and Bihar only. 1 lakh is, the number is such huge, right? Now, these were small institutions with no more than 20 students each. But the total number of children being taught in these pathshalas was considerable, means over 20 lakh, right? Now, these institutions were set up by wealthy people or the local community. At times, they were started by a teacher or a guru himself. Now, the system of education was flexible. How it was flexible? Few things that you associate with schools today were present in the pathshalas at the time. So there was no fixed fee, no printed books, no separate school building, no benches or chairs, no blackboards, no system of separate classes, no roll call registers means no attendance, then no annual examinations and no regular timetable. In some places, classes were held under a banyan tree. In other places, in the corner of a village shop or a temple, or at the guru's home. Now, fee depended on the income of parents. The rich had to pay more than the poor. So, fee was also not fixed for everyone. It was not same. Then teaching was oral. There was nothing in written, no notebooks, nothing. And the guru of the students and the guru decided what to teach. So, there was no predefined timetable or predefined syllabus, right? Now, in and okay, so the teaching was oral and Guru decided what to teach in accordance with the needs of the students. The students were not separated out into different classes. Means there was no classes, not there was not first, second, third, fourth. All were treated the same. All were taught the same thing of every age. So students were not separated out into different classes. All of them sat together in one place. The Guru interacted separately with groups of children with different levels of learning. Now, Adam discovered that this flexible system was suited to local needs. For instance, classes were not held during the harvest time, when rural children often worked in the fields. Now, these children, when they were working in their fields during harvest time, so the classes were not held, means there was nothing to lose. The Pathshala started once again when the crops had been cut and stored. This meant that even children of peasant families could study. Now, new routines, new rules. Up to mid-19th century, the company was concerned primarily with higher education, so it allowed the local pathshalas to function without much interference. After 1854, the company decided to improve the system of vernacular education. It felt that this could be done by introducing order within the system, imposing routines, establishing rules, ensuring regular inspections. And how was this to be done? So, what measures did the company undertake? It appointed a number of government pundits, each in charge of looking after 4 to 5 schools. The task of the pandit was to visit the pathshalas and try and improve the standard of teaching. Each guru was asked to submit periodic reports and take classes according to a regular timetable. Teaching was now to be based on textbooks and learning was to be tested through a system of annual examination. Students were asked to pay a regular fee, attend regular classes, sit on fixed seats, and obey the new rules of discipline. So these changes were made. Pathshalas which accepted the new rules were supported through government grants. Those who were unwilling to work within the new system received no government support. Over time, gurus who wanted to retain their independence found it difficult to compete with the government aided and regulated pathshalas. The new rules and routines had another consequence. Now, these new rules and routines had other consequences. Now, the children who were not studying at the time of harvest, the classes were not held at the time of harvest, so they were not losing anything. Now, they don't have that liberty. They were regular classes, so they were not taught separately if they are missing the classes. Okay, so that was their loss. So, in the earlier system, children from poor peasant families had been able to go to pathshalas since the timetable was flexible. The discipline of the new system demanded regular attendance even during harvest time when children of poor families had to work in the fields. So, inability to attend school came to be seen as indiscipline, as evidence of the lack of desire to learn. Now, let's see this figure 9, Sri Aurobindo Ghosh. In a speech delivered on January 15, 1908 in Bombay, Aurobindo Ghosh stated that the goal of national education was to awaken the spirit of nationality among the students. This required a contemplation of the heroic deeds of our ancestors. The education should be imparted in the vernacular so as to reach the largest number of people. Now he wanted that what our elders had done, the heroic deeds of them, what all they had done, this should be highlighted and this should be taught to such students. Okay, so this should be included. Now, Aurobindo Ghosh also emphasizes although the students should remain connected to their own roots, they should also take the fullest advantage of modern scientific discoveries and Western experiments in popular governments. Moreover, the students should also learn some useful craft so that they could be able to find some moderately remunerative employment after leaving their schools. Moderately remunerative means if they will earn a craft, they can sell it and they can earn money. Remuneration is salary or money, right? So I believe that this was the best because he wanted that the ancient history should also be taught to them. Then modern study, what British wanted, should also be taught to them, and a craft should also be taught, right? So all these will help them, right? Now the agenda for national education. British officials are not the only people thinking about education in India. From the early 19th century, many thinkers from different parts of India began to talk of the need for a wider spread of education. Impressed with the developments in Europe, some Indians felt that Western education would help modernize India. Some Indians also feel the same. They urged the British to open more schools, colleges, and universities and spend more money on education. Now, you will get to know about these efforts in chapter 8. Now, there were other Indians, however, who reacted against Western education, who were Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore were two such individuals. Now, let us see what they said. Now, Mahatma Gandhi. English education had enslaved us. This was according to Mahatma Gandhi. Now, Mahatma Gandhi argued that colonial education created a sense of inferiority in the minds of Indians. Okay, they were feeling this instilled a sense of inferiority in Indians, destroyed their pride in their own culture. Okay, it made them see Western civilization as superior. So, if they will feel that they are inferior in their culture, so obviously the other culture, the Western culture, the British culture at that time, they will feel that this is superior. This one is nice to follow, and this destroyed the pride they had in their own culture. Okay, so there was a poison in this education, said Mahatma Gandhi. It was sinful. It enslaved Indians, it cast an evil spell on them. Charmed by the West, appreciating everything that came from the West, Indians educated in these institutions began admiring British rule. Mahatma Gandhi wanted an education that could help Indians recover their sense of dignity and self-respect. He wanted such an education that could help regain their dignity and self-respect using Indian languages as a medium of instruction. That is why he was opposing these languages, this culture, right? So during the national movement, he urged students to leave educational institutions in order to show the British that Indians were no longer willing to be enslaved by them. Mahatma Gandhi strongly felt that Indian languages ought to be the medium of teaching. Education in English crippled Indians. It crippled Indians means it crippled their minds, it changed their minds. So it distanced them from their own social surroundings and made them strangers in their own lands. So he feels this, okay. Now, speaking a foreign tongue, despising local culture, the English educator did not know how to relate to the masses. Now, he was saying that the people who are educated in the medium of English, as a medium of English, so they were not now relating themselves to the masses. Means they are now not finding them as the same people as they were earlier with their own. No, they are not comfortable with their own people. Okay, but this was not actually the case. Now, Western education, Mahatma Gandhi said, focused on reading and writing rather than oral knowledge. It valued textbooks rather than lived experience and practical knowledge. He argued that education ought to develop a person's mind and soul. Literacy or simply learning to read and write by itself did not count as education. People had to work with their hands, learn a craft, and know how different things operated. This would develop their mind and their capacity to understand. Okay. So he was focusing only not to read and write, not to just learn and give examinations and all. He was also focusing on learning a craft. Now see here, source 3. Literacy in education is not education. Mahatma Gandhi wrote, by education I mean an all-round drawing out of the best in child and man, body, mind and spirit. Literacy is not the end of education nor even the beginning. It is only one of the means whereby a man and woman can be educated. Literacy in itself is not education. I would therefore begin the child's education by teaching it a useful handicraft and enabling it to produce for the moment it begins its training. I hold that the highest development of the mind and the soul is possible under such a system of education. Only every handicraft has to be taught not merely mechanically, and as is done today, but scientifically. That is, the child should know the why and the wherefore of every process. Now, as a nationalist sentiment spread, other thinkers also began thinking of a system of national education which would be radically different from that set up by the British. Now, many people were impressed or satisfied with Mahatma Gandhi's point of view. Tagore's Adobe of Peace. Many of you may have heard of Shanti Niketan. Do you know why it was established and by whom? So, Rabindranath Tagore started the institution in 1901. As a child, Tagore hated going to school. He found it suffocating and oppressive. The school appeared like a prison, for he could never do what he felt like doing. So, while other children listened to the teacher, Tagore's mind would wander away. The experience of his school days in Calcutta shaped Tagore's ideas of education. On growing up, he wanted to set up a school where the child was happy, where she could be free and creative, where she was able to explore her own thoughts and desires. Tagore felt that childhood ought to be a time of self learning outside the rigid and restricting discipline of the schooling system set up by the British. Teachers had to be imaginative, understand the child, and help the child develop her curiosity. According to Tagore, the existing schools killed the natural desire of the child to be creative, her sense of wonder. Tagore was of the view that creative learning could be encouraged only within a natural environment. So he chose to set up his school 100 kilometers away from Calcutta in a rural setting. He saw it as an adobe of peace, means Santi Niketan, where living in harmony with nature, children could cultivate their natural creativity. In many senses, Tagore and Mahatma Gandhi thought about education in similar ways. There were, however, differences too. Okay, now what were differences in both of their perspectives was Gandhiji was highly critical of Western civilization and its worship of machines and technology. But Tagore wanted to combine elements of modern Western civilization with what he saw as the best within Indian tradition. Okay, so he wants to combine both. He emphasized the need to teach science and technology at Santiniketan along with art, music, and dance. So these were the differences between both of their perspectives. Okay. Now, many individuals and thinkers are thus thinking about the way a national education system could be fashioned. Some wanted changes within the system set up by the British and felt that the system could be extended so as to include wider sections of people. Others urged that alternative systems be created so that people were educated into a culture that was truly national. Okay. Now, what was to define that was truly national? What do you mean by truly national? So, the debate about what is national education ought to be continued till after independence. So, this figure 12, children playing in a missionary school in Coimbatore, early 20th century. By the mid 19th century, schools for girls were being set up by Christian missionaries and Indian farm organizations. So, here we come to the end of this chapter, and I will post the exercise in the next video. Thank you.